The 4% rule versus guaranteed annuities. We're going to dive into this. A great post this guy said, and I pinned it because I want to do a video on this. My man John, this guy, what's the difference between using the 4% withdrawal system and getting, say, 5 or 6% on a guaranteed annuity? People on YouTube now saying the 4% rule doesn't work anymore because of future returns, but insurance companies gladly offering 5% annuities. This is a great freaking question, dude. 100%. This guy, alpha male. If you're calling yourself an alpha male, you ain't an alpha male, baby. It's just silly. He says the insurance companies can pay more due to clients that they have that die young. Yeah, that's not the answer, but we'll go into this. And I said, I love these kind of comments because my man here is asking, meaning he's willing to admit he doesn't know something. It's okay not to know things. All right. I just want to point that out. My wife sent that to me. It's pretty funny. You had to wear a mask for 2 years, but breathing Ohio air after one of the history's largest hazmat spills is fine. All right, so let's go back into what the difference between these two are. All right, so we're going to go, and the 4% rule is you start with $1 million, all right, and we're going to take $40,000 initially the first year, but then we're going to take more each and every year with inflation. Now, the whole thing is I like the idea behind the 4% rule. Bill Bengen, who came up with it, I'm a fan of this dude. I am. I like the idea because the old way of doing business was the markets give you 10% a year. And Dave Ramsey even has this on his freaking YouTube. It's nuts. The markets give you an average 10% a year. You can take 8% a year and still add to your capital. That's crazy. That's not how it works. Just because he averages 10% a year on any given year, I can't. It's literally what might be one of the most mind-numbing thing I've ever heard anyone say. And I've had people say this to me many a times. Well, the markets give me 10, I just take 8%. I don't need a 4% rule. That's not how it works. The markets don't just go on a linear rate of return. So Bill Bengen in the 1994 Journal for Financial Planning, he said, no, we can't use a linear rate of return of markets. So we can't just say the markets give you 10 each and every year, thus 10%. Thus, if you only take out 8%, you're still adding 2% to your capital. That's not how the markets work. And the markets go like this. That's what they do. With historically a trajectory from the southwest to the northeast, that's historically. But in the long run, we're all dead, as Keynes said, John Maynard Keynes. So we can't use this linear rate of return on the markets to assume that we can take out 8% a year or 7% a year and still add to our capital. So Bengen said, no, we're going to use a 4%. That's what he came up with, because he said, I looked at 60, I think it was 60% S&P 500, 40% 10-year Treasury bonds, and over any 30, I think it's 33-time year, I can't remember this, but 30-year time going back to 1926, the modern era, because that's when Ibbotson started it in 1926. Why 1926? Why not 1913? Nobody knows. Anyway, but he says if on any 30-year time frame, you never ran out of money. If it took 4% a year, adjusted each and every year with inflation and being the CPI. Tons of problems with this because while Bengen acknowledged there's no linear rate of return on investments for retirement planning, what he did not acknowledge, and no one has until basically the last 15 years, there's also no linear rate of return on spending. All right, a linear spending pattern. There's not. There's no evidence of that. None whatsoever. None. And that's, again, once I get off now I'm done with my second draft of my book. One more draft would be good to go. But there's no evidence at all that your spending goes up each and every year with inflation. It's not there, my friends. So Bengen was right, and that stocks don't go up each and every year with inflation, but he didn't take into account that spending doesn't go up each and every year with inflation. They didn't have enough research to look at the data sets back then. The Consumer Expenditure Survey only started in like 1984, I think. Yeah, I think it was 84. So we didn't have any data. There was a health retirement study at University of Michigan. I think that started in the late 80s or early 90s. We just didn't have enough data to understand consumer consumption spending. We did have enough data, obviously, to understand investment returns. So now we have a volatile rate of return on markets and a spending pattern that actually goes like this. like that. It's the exact opposite of what you think. It goes down with time as you age. Now, there's something called the retirement spending smile, which I take some serious umbrage at, that my man Blanchett, David Blanchett, writes about. And I interviewed on my YouTube channel. His thing is your spending drops until you hit this critical point where you start to need a lot of health care, and then it jumps up. The evidence of that I think is quite sparse, frankly. But it might happen, but be that as it may, I don't buy that either. But either way, the contention on both of those that your spending drops, your spending drops at least to some degree, and then it flows back up again under Blanchett's retirement spending smile, or under my thought process, which most people now I think start to agree with, that your spending just stays down. As you get older, you just don't spend that much. It's just a fact. There might be a year or two where it jumps, but not to the extent I think the retirement spending smile does. But anyway, and that's where we are today. All right. So the 4% rule is contingent on your income, your spending habits growing each and every year with inflation. The whole inflation thing is silly to me, because did people not know how inflation is measured? If they're using the CPI, I say, why the hell are you using that? It has nothing to do with you, especially if you're not in the market for buying a home each and every year or a new car each and every year. It's stupid. Two biggest components of CPI are housing and transportation. It's dumb. I'm not buying a car every year. Why should that be a part of my CPI? I own my own home. Why would that be a part of my CPI? I don't have owner equivalent rental, OER, which essentially assumes I'm renting my house to myself, and I don't rent it to anybody else either. It's stupid, but be that as it may. That's what a lot of the current stage of financial planning is relying on. So the 4% rule, again, assumes you're going to take $40,000 a year adjusted each and every year for inflation. The difference between that and an annuity is an annuity says you got $1 million, all right? And we're going to give you, we're going to do a SPIA, a single premium income annuity, of, we'll say 6% a year. That'd be $60,000 a year, which would be, was that $5,000 a month? We'll give you $5,000 a month. But that's flat. It doesn't change. I mean, you could look at inflation-adjusted annuities. I don't think they're worth it. In fact, I would highly recommend you don't do that. But you say, okay, I'm going to get $5,000 a month for the rest of my life with no change. All right, so that's what the difference is. And as long as I'm breathing, I get that money. If I'm breathing for 10 years, I get that money. If I'm breathing for 30 years, I get that money. That's what that is contingent on. There's no risk to you whatsoever, other than, inflation can eat away at your spending, your consumption. But there's no risk on this money running out, because it is guaranteed not to. The insurance company is guaranteeing it won't. Now, the 4% rule will say, hey, you can't take 5,000 a year out. You can take 3,300. That'd be 40,000. So you can see it. But the 4% rule, at some point, because we're adjusting it for inflation, will give you more on the back end of retirement, because you start lower and you take out more adjusted for inflation. That's just a difference right there. The 4% rule says start out lower and take out more later. And a single premium income annuity says you can start out as more now, but it'll never change. It'll always be that right there. I hope that makes sense. It's a big deal, man. And again, I want to also point out too, you're not actually getting a 5 or 6% rate of return. You're getting what's called an income distribution amount. All right, so it's not like you could take that $1 million and say, give me a 5 to 6% rate of return, and I'll wake up in 20 years and I'll get my principal back. That's not how it works. They're paying you part of your principal and part of an interest payment. So an income distribution percentage rate of 5 or 6% isn't the rate of return you're getting, dude. In fact, I don't have my calculator right here. So just for simplicity, say you're getting $60,000 a year on an income annuity. $60,000 a year, divide by a million. $1 million divided by 60,000 a year. You got to survive into your 17th year to actually make money, if that makes sense. All right, so if you die in year 16, you're just getting all your money back. You've made no money, none whatsoever. Now, if you live until year 30, you can do okay on that, and we can figure it out pretty easily. But that's the risk, is that you have to live a certain amount of time, because you just get your principal back. And these are things called mortality credits. The people who die early actually fund, it's no different than Social Security, the people who live longer than what the average life expectancy is. I don't want to get that too deep here. I just want to compare these two things. So the 4% rule is contingent on a couple things. Risk, i.e., what if the market doesn't perform as expected? Well, that's a big problem because now we have other people saying the 4% rule is now 3.2, 2.6. Now Bill Bengen saying 4.75. No one knows nothing. I just say a 5% rule just because your income's going to drop as you age, not your income, your spending. Can't guarantee you that, no. But no one can guarantee me the 4% rule is. I mean, this is why the whole thing about the FIRE movement. 4% rule, they act like it's sacrosanct. It's not. It's just some guy. Now, they have a Trinity study in 97 that kind of confirmed Bill Bengen is 4.4% when he put in small caps and international stocks. But I mean, this is what we're basing all this crap on. These two studies from the 90s. Huh? Then we had the new ones with the interest rates being lower, 3.2, 2.6. Bill Bengen is now saying 4.75 because interest rates are higher and valuations, all that stuff. But none of it's contingent on your spending dropping. It's all contingent on your spending increasing each and every year inflation. The evidence isn't there to support it. It's just not. I'm begging people to show me the evidence. I had Blanchett on. And I inherently disagreed. I said, show me the evidence. He goes, there is some. I said, show it to me. You know, I'm argumentative. I like Blanchett. I like him. He's doing crushing work in this business, in this field. But it's just like, come on, man. You know, we got to acknowledge at some point that maybe we've been wrong in telling people they have to wait until they retire until they can get enough money for a 4% adjusted for inflation. If the evidence isn't there, it's not there, dudes. Never mind using a linear CPI. So just real quick, I'll cut to the chase here. I'll get done. 4% rule, all right, assumes, oh, hold on. Wait, hold on a sec. There we go. Chloe just got back from UGA. So the 4% rule, remember, spending goes linear, all right? Your spending goes linear, all right? And your inflation grows linear. Spending and inflation grow linear while your, where's my blue pen, man? Over there. I don't know where my blue pen is. Anyway, so your spending and your inflation grow linear. Oh, man. While your investments are volatile, or varied, if that makes sense. All right, well, that's only 1 out of 3. 1 out of 3 ain't bad, right? Yeah, it is, because that's not how it works. Inflation is linear. It's not linear. Inflation is volatile. Your spending is volatile, and your investments are volatile. It's like a wave. A wave and a particle coexist at the same time, called a photon. People buy that stuff. It's a wave. Where's the particle there, guy? Anyway, so it's wave. I want to catch a. How do I catch a wave, dude? How do I catch a wave? How do I physically hold a wave? So stupid. All right. Anyway, so that's the thing with the 4% rule and any kind of retirement planning, where they're saying you're gonna have a volatile or varied rate of return, but a linear inflation and a linear spending patterns. And it's not. There's no evidence of any of that stuff. We know for a fact there's no linear inflation too. It's just like investments. At least with annuity, you're guaranteed to locked in. I'm locking in the bottom line at X amount of money. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. In fact, the likelihood that you're going to live to see 30 years isn't very high. It's just not. Some people will, and then they'll have made bank on the annuity. The drawback is many of you are going to die well before you make any real money on that annuity. That's the drawback. And so you're saying, look, most people are probably not going to live 30 years in retirement, so they're not going to see any big significant gains on the annuity. That's the drawback. But with every drawback, there's an upside too, and the upside is you're guaranteed never to run out. You don't have to worry about it. Hey, good question, man. I appreciate it. Love to hear your thoughts. We'll see you.